work? Does it work? Okay, now it works. Okay.
Hi. Hi, everybody. My name is Wendy. I'm part of the Environmental Action Team, and we do a quarterly speaker series. This is Lee First. I have known Lee for 18 and a half years. And I know that because that's...
Your son is that old.
Yeah, exactly. So Lee came from the East Coast. She was raised as a Quaker, and she did many years of tree planting and backpacking, and then she came out here. She probably did a lot of other things I don't know about, but she was working for the Lummi Indian tribe doing wetlands work, and then she came to the North Sound Baykeeper team in Bellingham. That's where we met, and so that's why we've known each other this year, and that long, and she's been part of the North Sound Baykeepers and Spokane River Keeper, and now Twin Harbors Waterkeeper. And she's an amazing investigator and paddler. She puts a lot of polluters on notice and makes their life difficult. So, yay, Lee.
Yeah. Thank you, Wendy. Yeah, thank you for coming. As Wendy said, I'm your Twin Harbors Waterkeeper, and I've been working in the Chehalis watershed mostly for the last 9 years, and in the Waterkeeper movement for 19 years. And so our Waterkeeper group is one of over 300 that's all over the world and in 47 countries. And the area that we work on is the Chehalis watershed, the Willapa watershed, and all the drainages on the west side of the Olympics up to Cape Flattery. But mostly I work in the Chehalis watershed, and I live in Rochester, right next to the river. So, wow, there's what I'm talking about up there. That's amazing. So I'm going to talk about this horrible idea. The people mostly in Lewis County and the cities of Centralia and Chehalis have been trying to build a dam for a long time, or wanting some serious flood control, because they have really bad floods. And so right now, there's the draft environmental impact statement is out for public comment, and the Department of Ecology. The Department of Ecology has a program called the Office of the Chehalis Basin, and they run this program called the Chehalis Basin Strategy. And so they have a staff at the Department of Ecology here in Olympia, and they have a board, a Chehalis Basin board, that meets every month on the first Thursday of each month. And their mission is equal parts of restoration of the Chehalis Basin and flood control. And that's just a picture of the Chehalis watershed. It's the second largest watershed in the state of Washington, and it's only in the state of Washington. Like the Columbia River is, in Canada and other states, but this watershed is just in Washington. And does this have a pointer?
Not that works well.
Oh, all right. So this is the proposed location of the dam. And there is one other dam now. It's on the Skookumchuck.
When you say this, do you mean that little red line I see there, or what?
Yeah. The red line is where they want to put this proposed dam in the headwaters, a little bit upstream of the town of PL. You're welcome. So this just shows that the area, they call the outline that's in kind of tan the study area. So that's the part of the watershed that has been impacted the most by flooding. And also curiously, so this environmental impact statement, there's been a series of public meetings that are going on now. Last week, there was one in Aberdeen. The week before that, there was one in Centralia. And next Wednesday night is the last one. It's in Boistford, which is up on the South Fork. And so they sent notices of these meetings and of the draft environmental impact statement to people that are within that study area. And there's so many people around the state that have no idea that the era of dam building is over. I mean, we all know that. And Washington is a leader in taking dams down. And here they want to put a dam up here, and in my opinion, they have not done a good job at all in letting the people around the state know. Most people have no idea that this thing is. What? Yeah, they don't call it a dam, but it is a dam. They call it a flood retention facility. And so I've been to all the meetings so far and the online public comment periods, or public comment sessions. There's been 2. And I make a point of calling it a dam. In fact, I call it Lewis County's mega dam. Oh, yeah, yeah. Well, some of the commenters who've been following this for a while know that it's a dam, and sometimes even the proponents trip up and call it a dam by mistake. I think they're all told to be calling it an FRE, and the E stands for expandable. So it's not only a giant dam, but they're building it so it can be raised. And, I don't really want to go through this history because it's boring, but in 2007, there was a flood of record. And if you guys were around then, you probably remember the freeway was closed down and there was massive flooding. And so that's kind of the thing that set this whole thing in motion. And then the governor started this process called the Chehalis Basin Strategy, and since then, this group has been meeting and doing a lot of fish restoration projects. I have to give them credit for that, but also planning big flooding projects to prevent flooding. Both of the tribes that are in this watershed are opposed, and they have been since 2020. And the Quinault tribe is very vocal about this, and the Chehalis tribe is also opposed, but not as vocal. And so around I think it was 2019, they came out with the first design for this mega dam, and there was quite an uproar from the Chehalis tribe, because when the water would back up behind this dam, it would flood one of their most important cultural sites at the Headwater Gorge. And so the governor paused the process in 2020. And since then, in these last 5 years or so, the Office of the Chehalis Basin has been working with consultants and working with the cities in Lewis County and the other people on the board to come up with this new design, which has been moved upstream to avoid impacting the Chehalis cultural site. And so now the Office of the Chehalis Basin Board has a series of choices to make, and in the next 6 months, they're going to be looking at some combinations of. Here, let's see if sorry. I just want to show you these combinations. Maybe I don't have them here. Okay. Sorry. Yeah, so in mid-2026 is going to be a really important time for this Office of the Chehalis Basin. They're going to decide whether they want to go forward with this plan for a dam. And they have kind of a checklist of there's 6 options. And the Skookumchuck Dam, the removal or alteration is part of it. And so they're going to pick one of these options, which may or may not include the dam. It may or may not include a series of actions that they call local actions, non-dam alternative, which is levees and other things around the cities of Centralia and Chehalis to protect them from flooding. And so there's a group of us that have been working really hard on this in the last 2 years, and we call ourselves the Chehalis Allies. And so, you know, we're really keeping our fingers crossed that the board decides not to go through with this, not to choose one of the alternatives that includes a dam. It's the Chehalis Basin Board is going to make a recommendation to the governor. It's made up of a couple of appointees by the governor's office, a representative from the Chehalis tribe, a representative from the Quinault tribe, an environmental representative, a couple of elected officials from Centralia and Chehalis. There's Vicki Rains is a county commissioner from Grays Harbor County, and she's also the chair of the Chehalis Basin Flood Control District. So yeah, so there's a flood control district person too. And so they're going to pick, and they operate by consensus. So they think that they're going to be able to pick one of these packages of options. And, you know, I think it's going to be a lot of drama because the 2 tribal reps are going to vote no on anything that includes a dam. Yeah.
How many people are on the board total?
6.
6.
Yeah.
Not even an odd number.
No.
So it could,
Yeah.
okay.
Good question. And so, I think he has a question.
Wait, just,
Who's the Quinault rep?
the-
Or who's the rep from the Quinault?
The Quinault representative is Tyson Johnston. He's also a tribal commissioner or a tribal council member. And he's amazing. He is a,
Guy McMines, he's passed, hasn't he, by now?
who?
Guy McMines was very.
Yeah, I haven't heard of him, sorry.
Okay, one of the, Weyerhaeuser's the major owner, landowner, right? Where's their position on this?
They've been kind of absent. They,
Can they be absent? It's their land.
they are not participating. And I think if this dam goes through, the state will have to take their property by, you know, seize the property or something, because the dam is, if it is built at the proposed location, it is on Weyerhaeuser property.
Eminent domain.
What?
Oh, they would take it by eminent domain?
yes.
Yeah.
So next year is going to be really important because the legislature is going to have to fund this thing. And that's another whole dilemma because there's no clear funding mechanism. It's going to cost upwards of $2 billion. And, you know, there's no funding strategy. There's nobody that has come forward to be the owner or the operator or have liability for this thing either.
Well, is it a salmon run?
Oh yeah, we're going to talk about salmon. Yeah, it's very important for salmon. But the legislature is going to be key because if this thing goes forward, then if they vote on one of the choices with the dam, then the legislature is going to have to fund it, which, you know, we need to really lobby them to make sure that doesn't happen.
Does your table have price tags attached to each of the alternatives?
They're still working on that. So
Okay.
they're still working on that. So I think by summer of 2026, there's going to be
So this summer.
much more information about each of the alternatives and how much they'll cost.
Before they make
Yeah.
their recommendation?
Right. Thanks for the question. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah, my question, well, who are the big supporters of this? Is it the engineering and the engineering entities and consultants? I mean, who's?
Oh, yeah, they've
I've
been
worked
getting
in-
paid for like 7 years for designs and, all kinds of things. But the big supporters, I think, are the cities of Centralia and Chehalis and Lewis County and the Port of Centralia and the Port of Chehalis, because they've been building in the floodplain for 25 years and they want to keep doing it.
So where's the Port of Aberdeen or Port of Grace Harbor in this situation?
Well, they're going to hardly get any benefit out of it because they're so far downstream. So this whole thing is really going to only benefit.
The two cities.
Most of the benefit is going to be in Lewis County.
But this has been dragging on for over a decade,
Yeah,
right?
longer than that. Yeah.
So, I mean, it's back when I was involved, it was just starting.
Yeah.
Well, it was almost a victory that the governor stopped
Yeah.
and said, you got to find a
Right.
non-dam alternative.
Right.
How has that progressed?
Yeah, so a committee met for almost a year, and they came up with a some strategies for non-dam alternative, and they're still there. But well, I do have a slide about, or a picture of the non-dam alternatives, which are mostly, yeah. And, but the DEIS, which is open for comment period now, does not include that.
Does
Yeah.
not include a non-dam alternative.
Right, it does not include that.
So for anyone who wasn't in this area in 2005, the river flooded over Interstate 5.
Yeah, that was
At
2007.
Okay,
Yeah.
in that era.
Right.
Only after that flood did they put in enough levees so they could develop all of the land, which is now commercial, on the west side of Interstate 5. And therefore, they now want to defend that with this development.
Yes. And massive other fills, which I have some pictures of a little bit later. And so this is the new design. It's been moved upstream, and it's called a run-of-the-river dam. So it's open at the bottom. Like when it's not flooding, the river can flow unimpeded through the river, through the dam. And then when the river is predicted to flow at 38,800 CFS at the Grand Mound gauge, that's when they'll close the dam, and there'll be a reservoir behind it that'll be about 5 miles long. And so
I'm trying to visualize what you're saying. So if the dam were built, and then they need to implement the dam
Yeah.
purpose, then it becomes a great big lake,
yeah, it'll be a reservoir.
which in the past has wiped out the
Right,
areas. and
right.
cultural-
So there's going to be a bypass structure so that, and trap and haul so that they can move fish around it when the gate is closed. And the really interesting thing about this is it's just a massive amount of concrete. And the state of Washington only allows in-river work when the river's really, really dry. It's called the fish window. And so They think it'll take 5 years to build this because they can only build it in the fish window. And it'll just take a massive amount of concrete. And why they're building it, they're going to have a conduit, like a bypass conduit, that allows the fish to pass during construction. But the Chehalis River in the last like 3 years has reached the lowest CFS ever, like record low. And so, you know, I don't know, and this thing is going to use a lot of water to make the concrete. And, you know, it's just a huge boondoggle. Yeah, these are the changes. So, you know, the Chehalis River Basin Flood Control District is the proponent of this. And they will tell you that, you know, this is the most marvelous thing ever invented, this flow-through dam. And, you know, it has an updated design so that fish can pass through. It has an amazing vegetation management plan for that reservoir, which is going to have to be cleared of trees before they can build it. And you know, there's like 4 or 5 quarries that they're going to have to go get rock and move it here to construct the dam, and there's going to be roads and, you know, just massive amount of work in this very sensitive part of the watershed where, you know, the spring and fall Chinook are already like on the brink of extinction, and this is going to put those fish over the edge, and this is the best spawning habitat upstream of this thing in the whole basin. Yeah, so this just shows that, so this shows the previous design, the original, and then the design of the dam that was moved upstream and how much bigger it is. Oh, and we all think that the cost that they're saying 1.3 to 1.6 billion is very much underestimated, and there's still a lot more engineering and, you know, construction costs that are not accounted for yet. Yeah, so they've changed the location, they've updated the fish passage design. They have new mitigation plans, but, you know, the mitigation was not included in the EIS. So, you know, they're saying that they can mitigate for the damage of this, but, you know, I don't see how they possibly could. And it's much worse to go wreck habitat and then try to mitigate for it than it is just to protect the habitat. You know, it's hard enough just to do that in the first place. Oh, and another part of this which I haven't mentioned is the other thing that they're planning on doing in conjunction with this is raising the levee around the Chehalis Centralia Airport. And that airport is right next to the river in the floodplain, and it already has a big levee around it, but they want to raise it so that it'll be better protected from big floods. And so, you know, just that is so crazy to me. It's like, why do they have to fly planes in and out of there during a flood? And how many more houses and people is that going to put at risk to protect an airport that is hardly used? You know, it's yeah, it's a recreational airport, yeah. It's just nuts.
Who are the big winners in this if it goes ahead? It does seem really, I mean, I thought it would have died on the vine a decade ago.
Yeah.
So I was sort of surprised to see that it's come up again from my work in that area, because you know, using vegetative management skills is what we did. and using, as I mentioned earlier, beavers back in and bringing them back into that watershed, because that's the upper Chehalis on that branch.
Yeah.
And so it seems like there's has to be, who has the big vested interest more than the city of Chehalis and
It's the
Centralia?
developers, I think.
Yeah, okay,
Yeah.
so that's who's funding somebody must
No.
have funded these studies.
No, we're all funding it. It's paid for by Washington state tax dollars.
Okay, under what agency?
I don't know, the flood control zone district, I don't know how that's a
Yeah,
good question. I don't know. What? Yeah, Department of Ecology did the EIS. Yeah, so there's so many impacts. There's impacts there's noise, to wildlife, that when the dam is closed during a flood, and this area already in the 2007 flood, it had 1,600 landslides up in that Weyerhaeuser area, and so it's very unstable, and so it's and to my knowledge, Weyerhaeuser hasn't altered their logging practices or done anything to, mitigate or try to prevent those landslides. So when that reservoir is full, there's probably going to be a major amount of sediment that builds up in that reservoir, which is very expensive to remove sediment. And yeah, there's lots of acres and river miles of impacts, and the EIS says that, the temperature will rise in the river, and the temperature is already a problem. Like last summer, a bunch of places in the Chehalis got over 20 degrees C, which is lethal to salmon. So it's already, in terrible shape. Yeah. So lots and lots of impacts, and I have a handout up here that kind of summarizes the impacts that are listed in the EIS. Yeah.
Hi, maybe you're going to get to this, but I'm curious about what the support is for the local actions non-dam alternative.
Yeah. So right now the comment period is open, and there's about 350 comments on the online form, and there's almost all of them are against this dam. And so it's a really good time to pipe up and say, we want local actions, non-dam alternatives instead. We want floodplain reconnection. We want changes in forest practices. We want, anything, wetland restoration, anything we can think of that are alternatives to this, and raising people's homes, moving people out of harm's way, that sort of thing. Those are proven technologies that work. What?
Okay, the comment was for a lot less money.
Yes.
We have people online, so we need to repeat
yeah.
everything. Here, we have another question.
So years ago, probably 10 years ago or something, I met with a county commissioner about something completely different. And she said, I can't think of anything else except for this dam issue. It's so huge to that community. And she said, and her point was, I can't do nothing. I need a win. I need somehow politically to say that I'm doing something to solve this problem. What does that look like?
Yeah.
So I think the mitigation kinds of things that you're talking about, who's promoting those, and how does that look like a win for the community, for the county commissioners, for the people?
For the commissioners in Lewis County. Yeah. Well, one thing is forest practices. So we know that there's floods, droughts, and climate change, and the floods and the droughts are getting worse and worse, and we need to change forest practices in the headwaters so that there's less water running off in the winter. And that will help solve a lot of problems. And And, you know, a win, I think, is moving people out of harm's way and raising homes. You know, in the whole watershed, only 400 homes have been raised. That's pathetic. It's the cheapest, safest, easiest thing to do.
I'm sorry, but I don't think Lewis County politicians considers wins for the environment
Yeah.
to be wins.
Right.
The wins are to the people that fund their next campaign.
Yeah.
And those are not the developers.
Yes.
And it's Weyerhaeuser not having to change their practices.
Right. Right. Yep. I'm going to hire her. She's savvy.
I'm from Centralia.
Oh.
And my home got flooded twice.
Oh, wow.
But it's near the Skookumchuck.
Yes.
And so I was wondering about that other dam on the Skookumchuck.
Yes.
I think that first flood we got is something happened with the dam.
Yeah.
Do you remember back in the 1990s?
You said something.
I think the dam got breached in the 1990s, and that's what flooded our house.
Oh, wow.
So
You
it
know-
was a dam problem that caused our flood.
Oh, wow. I don't remember that, but I do know the Skookumchuck that dam does afford some amount of flood control for people downstream. And two of the last floods, the major water came from the Cascade foothills. So it came from the New Wacom or the Skookumchuck, and a dam on the upper Chehalis River would have made almost no difference. Because it's important where that water's coming from. And, you know, over time, I think a majority of the most water has come from the Willapa Hills, not from the Cascade foothills, but that's no guarantee. Yeah, sorry I can't answer your question. Yeah, so fish passage, you know, this is a major hit. And at the Aberdeen public hearing last week, there was 23 speakers that testified. 1 was in favor of the dam, and 6 were Quinault tribal members, who were all fishermen and depend on fish for their cultural practices and their income. And you know, each one of them described this as death of 1,000 cuts. Like, you know, these fish can't take another hit. And so the increase in temperature, the spawning habitat. So having that dam impound water and sediment behind it is going to change the sediment processes and change the amount of wood that flows down. And, you know, wood is not going to be able to pass through that channel that's underneath the dam. And so it's going to have a lot of other impacts that I think weren't really covered, or the EIS said, you know, these are significant adverse impacts. And the EIS has this chart that I know it's kind of hard to read, but I have a copy of it there if anyone wants it. So it's with no dam, the impacts to fish in the late century with climate change already show a serious decline. But with the dam, considering climate change, it's much, much worse.
Even with the flow-through option.
Yeah,
Even with the flow-through option was
yeah.
the question.
yes. So all these impacts in this DEIS are this flow-through dam. There's a fish biologist that's worked for the Quinault Indian Nation for at least 20 years. His name is Larry Listell. And so this is what he says. In my judgment, both spring and fall run Chinook spawning aggregations that currently exist upstream of the town of PL would be extinguished by construction and operation of the proposed dam. And the Quinault has a technical team that are working on comments in response to the draft EIS. So that's probably going to be the most important comments.
Question, where's the Chehalis tribe in this?
Yeah, they're against it. And at
And where's their technical, because they're more directly involved.
Right. Well, I'm sure they're drafting comments. They have a staff that includes a couple fish biologists, and I heard their chairman, Dustin Clatouche, at the online hearing that was about 10 days ago. There were at least 10 Chehalis tribal members that testified in opposition to the dam. And almost all of them mentioned that their hunting and gathering abilities would be curtailed, and and of course the fish would be harmed, and I don't know exactly what the answer to that, but I'm sure they're working on comments, and the comments are due on February 4th.
Okay, the common sense of it is the Chehalis Basin has been flooded for thousands of years, and that's how it's maintained its vegetation and so forth and whatnot.
Right.
The problem is where people put their houses.
Exactly.
And that's why we planted all those poplar plantations to destroy or to minimize the flow.
Yeah.
So it seems unescapably that preventing the flooding is going to damage the Chehalis floodplain.
Right, yeah. Well, this would curtail the major floods. And there would still be, like the flood that was at the last week of December. That flood would not have triggered the closure of the dam. So there still will be some floods, but not the record-setting floods. And, there was a really interesting comment at the online. Edna Fund has been a commissioner of Lewis County and on the flood control zone district. And, she's going to go to her grave wanting a dam. And she said at the online hearing, she said this. It was so choice. She said, the Chehalis River has been flooding since 1933. And, yeah. I know. Yeah. And all this time we've been trying to get, flood control. And then Dan Penn, who was the historic preservation officer for the Chehalis tribe, and he says, he said, a previous speaker said that the Chehalis River has flooded since 1933. And he goes, no, the Chehalis River has flooded for millennia. And it keeps the river healthy. It helps with all kinds of landscape processes. And, yeah, it was choice. It's worth listening to. The comments are recorded and are on the website, and anybody can listen to them. What's the website? It's the, yeah.
Go ahead.
The Chehalis, the Department of Ecology draft environmental impact statement. If you go to the Chehalis Basin Strategy website, or just do a search for this draft environmental impact statement. There's a bunch of hot links on there that take you to the recordings of the meetings that have happened so far.
All right. And so we have a question here.
Oh, I don't have a question. But when I moved up to Olympia, I sold my house to my brother-in-law's son, and the two of them raised the house up out of floodwater. So that, if things flood, you just build your house a little higher, and that takes care of it. I don't think they've had any problems since then.
So this is the schedule. So there's one more public in-person hearing. It's next Wednesday in Boisfort, and that's going to be a really interesting meeting because a lot of people up in the South Fork of the Chehalis did have major impacts to their homes, and bridges, and just that area is just wiped out. And so it's going to be really interesting to see what people have to say there. And the comment period ends on the 4th. Yes. I don't know if any of you know Kevin Hansen. He's the Thurston County hydrologist. And I've seen him give a presentation a couple times about how important forestry is to flooding and droughts. And he's just amazing. I saw him give a presentation that talked about the importance of having older forests in the headwaters because they help retain water and release it slowly in the summer when the river needs it the most. And they also soak up water and help to prevent floods. And so this is what Kevin said at one of his presentations. He said, if we got older forests over about a third of the upper Chehalis, I believe we could store an equivalent amount of water to the water being proposed behind the dam. I mean, that's just amazing, isn't it? Yeah. That's what we need to do. That'll really take a crack at solving it. These are some of my neighbors. So I live in Rochester, and these are some of my neighbors. The woman on the left, her name's Betsy. She's farmed in Independence Valley down near me for 25 years. She's raised her house twice. She raised it after 2007, and then she raised it again. No, she raised it after the 2007 flood, and then again. And then the guy on the right, Joseph, he raised his house 9 feet. And he didn't get any money for it. He didn't get any help from anybody to do it. And evidently, it just takes forever to get help from the state or FEMA or anybody else to raise your home. And then that red house just got raised. It's a couple miles from my house, and they waited 5 years to raise their home because the funding just didn't come through. And this is actually my favorite thing. So these are some of the fills. This is not the big factory outlet malls that we all go by when we go drive south on the freeway, the Walmarts and the whatever all those huge shops are. So that Harrison Avenue, that's near my house. They just filled 43 acres in the floodplain right next to the river. And it's a big box store. It looks like a Amazon fulfillment center or something. The walls are up now. And this went in, I think about 5 years ago, right next to the river in the floodplain, is 70 acres. The port of Chehalis, there's a Fred Meyer distribution center down there that it got a permit to expand. It's in the floodplain. Down by Napavine, they're just filling enormous amounts. So that's where the Newaukum River comes in. And you drive around the port of Chehalis, and you look around, and there's signs that say land for sale. They're trying to keep doing this. They're going to keep doing it as long as they possibly can. Yeah, and that's what Centralia looked like in the 2007 flood. And the proponents will say, this cost $11 billion in economic damage to the state because the freeway was closed for 6 days or something.
That's a truck, we just went around.
I guess that's it.
Lee, I have a question about
Yeah.
the all of the fills that are taking place. So
Yeah.
they're allowing land to be filled, and then they're going to allow building on top of that land.
Yeah.
Where are the regulations to stop the fills because they're in the floodplain?
Yeah, the zoning rules are not good down there, and they're getting a lot of pushback now that they need to change that, and yeah. And I regret not partaking in some of these things because I know they've had hearings when they built that Galvin Road Unfee distribution center. And they said something like, it's not in the floodplain, and they're going to somehow retain, they have a big, detention pond, but.
Yeah. So, there might be more questions. I want you to go over to your little display and tell people what the handouts are.
Oh, yeah.
So they know whether they should take them, and then we'll go back
Yeah.
for more questions.
Yes, great. And before I forget, I don't know, I sent you this, Wendy, this talk that we're doing in Olympia on Tuesday night with Paul Koberstein. He wrote a book called Canopy of Titans, and he's going to be talking a lot about forestry and problems with forestry, as well as the proposed wood pellet plant that they want to build in Hoquiam. So you're all invited to this. It's at 4:30 at the Olympia Library. So back here I have a pile of comments that anyone can use to help them write a comment and put on the online comment form or send it in. And as we don't need to provide technical comments. We can just say the reasons that we're opposed to it. And I think that'll make a big difference when we go to the legislature next year, that we can say, 2,000 people were opposed to this because of X, Y, and Z. So feel free to take that. And then I have a couple pages that came out of the EIS that talk about the unavoidable impacts that this thing will cause. And then I also have a sign-up sheet in case anybody wants to be on our e-news. And yeah.
All right, more questions.
Whitney, if you could actually first, could you read one from the chat really quick?
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry.
So Holly Porter asked, what's the most effective thing we can do? Also, will the handouts be available as online documents?
I think the most important thing now is to comment. And if you can possibly go to that Boistfort meeting and comment. The meetings are fascinating. And I've been to all of them. And
Handouts,
handouts, let's see. Oh, yes, so the handout about the impacts from the DEIS is available on the Quinault Nation's website. So they have a website that talks about these impacts and why the Quinault Indian Nation is against it. And so if you just do a search for the Quinault Indian Nation.
Lee, I can send me.
Oh, yeah, I can send it to Wendy.
And then I will put it on Realm, so if anyone can get
great.
to Realm, we'll do that.
Okay, great. Thank you.
You had a question.
Thank you so much for this presentation today. Maybe these are more comments than questions, but I really like what you have here on this handout, and I appreciate the comments that were made about when you said you were talking to the Lewis County Commissioners. I think it's always a strength to start with what you're for as opposed to what you're against. Although in this case, since the comments are directly to the DEIS, you do want to be specific to what it's asking for. But I think at these public hearings anyway, to say, obviously we don't want people's homes to flood, right?
Yeah.
We have a solution. We have an alternative.
right.
And here's what that looks like.
Yes.
And, you know, and start with that before going to, we hate dams, not in my backyard,
right,
you know,
right.
kind of stuff. Sorry for the foot stomping. The other thought I'm wondering about is just, you know, accentuating the multi-benefits of a different solution. You know, so the dam is like a single solution to a single problem.
Right.
Whereas the other approach is multiple solutions to multiple
yeah.
problems, because it's all interconnected, right? Which is
Right.
part of what we believe here at this church. You know, with the land use, the fish, the people. You know, you make a dam that only fixes one aspect of the problem, and it's a really expensive solution.
And it's
So-
expensive. It's going to be expensive to take it down in the future too.
It's also very counterproductive to the direction the state is going in
Yeah,
other ways
yes.
in terms of taking down dams
Yep.
or, so I work at Department of Transportation, full
Yep.
disclosure, in the office that does fish passage barrier removal. So, you
Right,
know, we're spending
right.
billions of dollars
Yes.
to restore fish runs. Why
Yes.
would we do this?
Yeah.
Thank you again.
Oh,
Really
yeah.
glad to hear about this today.
Great points. Thank you so much.
Have a good day. I have to run.
Is this a prototype dam, or is there a dam of similar type somewhere in North America?
Yeah, I think that there's a dam on they also call it a run of the river dam, and I think Mud Lake, or the Mud Lake Dam, there is one other one in Washington that has had all kinds of problems with sediment buildup. And I think it's the Mud Lake Reservoir. What? Yes, Mud Mountain. Yep. And there's also one in Japan. And I don't know much about that one either, I'm sorry to say.
Thank you.
Where is Mud Mountain?
It's just south of Enumclaw,
Oh, yeah.
off Highway 410, between the Mud Mountain Road goes off between Enumclaw and Buckley on
Yeah.
410.
You know, at one of the recent meetings of the Chehalis Basin Board, one of the pro-dam people said, you know, the series of atmospheric rivers that hit in late December, if that had happened, we dodged the bullet. You know, it was mostly up north that they had all those problems. And where they had a lot of problems was these giant distribution centers and places that were in the floodplain. And like, you know, this dam, if it is built, there's no way that it would survive a series of atmospheric rivers, you know, that are predicted for late century. Yeah, it's not going to be the solution that they think it is. But moving people out of harm's way and, you know, stopping the building in the floodplain and reconnecting floodplains, bringing beavers in, you know, that kind of thing, and revamping the forest practices. That's going to make a difference.
I have been wondering if part of the Chehalis tribes not being as vocal as the Quinault is that they live a lot closer to this construction site, and there are going to be an awful lot of jobs for 5 years or whatever it is that takes this. And if that hasn't been brought to their economic development branch, it probably will be when as this becomes gets closer to a decision point. But the fact that they're looking for state money to build it, I think, is a strong argument against it.
Yeah.
Any more questions for Lee? All right. Nothing more online? All right, thank you
Thank you so much
much
for coming, everybody.